Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 3 of the NECC Hearthstone matches tonight. It is Frosty, joined tonight with Mick. How are you doing today?
I'm making it, man. I can't complain. Life is rolling.
Absolutely love to hear that. Tonight, our two players that we will be seeing facing off are going to be FluffyBoy and Rowan Collom. It's going to be a very interesting match tonight. Mick, do you have anything that you're excited to see for these two players?
I'm excited to see these decks in general, if I'm being completely honest.
What about these decks in particular?
I mean, these overall, looking at these guys right now, haven't seen too much of what's going on here. We see super unique deck archetypes. I'll give them that. In terms of bans, we did get the most kind of run-of-the-mill decks banned and got them out of the way. We got Token Druid, which is super cheap to craft, really easy to make, so a lot of people are going to be running that with how strong it is. But we did see FluffyBoy banning God's Voice Warrior that he has going on here, which we were kind of discussing about, which has a lot of win conditions. It's kind of stalling the game out, trying to get those draws in with a Wrench Caliber, kind of like a Bomb, but also with a Deathwing and a Galakron and all kinds of deals going on. But overall, looking at the rest of these decks, we see your run-of-the-mill Hunter going on here, managing what you can. Run-of-the-mill Demon Hunter, which is always just going to be face, but with a little bit of Soul Fragments thrown in there. Besides that, though, we do have two Paladins in this matchup, but not the kind of Paladin that we're thinking, which is odd. We've seen a lot of Ramp Paladin. Yeah. We've seen a lot of, Pure Paladin. We've seen a lot of both of those because they're super strong, but the two we're looking at right now is looking like a Corrupt Paladin and a Murloc Paladin. So lots of variety going on here. Super excited to see what these guys can do with it because, overall, haven't seen much of this at all. So I'm excited to see what these guys can manage with it.
Absolutely. I was taking a quick look at the Corrupt Paladin. I was trying to figure out what deck archetype that really went into because it had this feel of like a kind of back-heavy duel kind of deck, but it doesn't have anything to cheat out cards like that. So yeah, a Corrupt Paladin with Yashiraj. It's going to be very interesting if you can pull that off. Maybe late game having a nice swing turn if it comes down to it. But yeah, at the moment we're just waiting for our players to get up and ready, so we can get this show on the road.
Yeah, in the meantime, another thing to mention is that we've seen a priest ban tonight already. Oh yeah. But thankfully this time around, even though I hate going up against priests up in ladder and things like that, on the competitive stage is a totally different story because you have to draw that match out. You're forced into it unless you ban it. So with FluffyBoy opting to go ahead and ban the Warrior, he still has a pretty long drawing game because we see that Rowan here, God's Voice, he's running 2 slower decks and then 2 quicker decks. With the quicker decks obviously being Murloc Paladin because it's just a lot of quick draws. And then you got Totem Shaman as well. So with that, we're going to see a lot of variety here in terms of what God's Voice is running. But when it comes down to FluffyBoy, everything seems to be pretty run-the-mill in terms of archetypes with those other decks going on. So like with Druid, which got banned, Token, Aggro, Paladin, that's the unique part. But Hunter and Demon Hunter still hold home into kind of what their whole archetype runs into, both very, aggro as the Hunter name usually goes for. So overall, I'm excited to see which ones I choose first, because overall, as the game kind of goes, these players are going to be forced to play all 3 decks eventually if it goes back and forth long enough. So interesting to see how these players can kind of interact and utilize these decks against each other, because say, for example, Hunter or Demon Hunter gets matched up against this Priest. With the Priest having so much heals and constantly finding ways to do that, if Rowan can go ahead, or God's Voice, if he can go ahead and get those decks out of the way and make Priest his last one, he's looking pretty comfortable. He's probably going to be looking to get rid of these aggro decks up front because they're so kind of iffy. You want to make sure to get those mulligans off, and you want to go ahead and get the right cards in hand so you can get some kind of curve going. But overall, lots of gambles looking right here, but overall, we are getting here into the first match. So, anything's possible at this point.
Absolutely. And it looks like our players have gotten into the match. So we will be loading in shortly. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game tonight. It's going to be very interesting. Who's going to be at the bottom?
Okay. We had a little bit of disconnection at the very beginning there, but looking like right now it's ironing out for us.
Absolutely. But it looks like we are going to be getting things settled. Okay. Yep. No, I loaded in. And yes, it looks like games come off a little bit of a start. We're going to be having Murloc Paladin versus Secret Hunter. Make first reactions. How do you think this is going to go down?
I think when it comes down to it, looks how much of these secrets Hunter can get off. Looking at his hand right now, he doesn't have too many to work with. But overall, looking at Paladin and with Murloc and how much aggression and overwhelmingness you can put onto the board, with that Tinger that FluffyBoy just drew, that's obviously going to help retaliate with this. But with such a strong start from God's Voice and having, that Angler Rod in hand and things that he likes to trade, I think overall, and as the game rolls out, he kind of has an upper hand here. Issue is, if Hunter can find an explosive trap or something like that to shut that down, that's going to be most of his hand utilized right then and there, because Murlocs are so cheap, their health is so low, it allows easy trades for that.
Absolutely. So much damage coming out early. That's going to be 8 attack on that Tidecaller. We'll see where he places it. He trades in the buff first before going face. Just want to make sure that that's out of the way in case this were something more worrisome. But Explosive Trap does come out, and he does land 7 on the face, but having to give up his full board.
Yeah, that's huge, because especially when we see that he has a Cold Light Seer in hand for God's Voice, that's huge for him. He could have played that. He had the man to establish himself on board, get a little bit more health on these minions, force those trades there, but overall he didn't seem to opt for that. He seemed to go, the very damage-hungry route, trying to get that damage on board. Sadly not getting it off because Hunter got the upfront explosive trap. But at this stage in the game, he only has 1 left. So if God's Voice can find a way to pull out some more Paladins, or not Paladins, Murlocs, by some manner, it could look a lot better for him. But so far, that's a huge issue on his behalf.
He's going to need to be getting really lucky with this Angling Rod here, as the 7-2 is tagged out. Sorry, both of those 1-1s being able to take him down, as a board of 3/3s. Well, not full board, but 4 minions out of nowhere on turn 4.
Pretty close, especially Wolpertingers, with the buff going on both of them, and that's huge for him. Especially those are such good hits right there for him to be able to establish that. This is exactly what FluffyBoy is looking for, especially after he just drowned out and completely wiped God Voice's half. This is what this man was exactly asking for, because he could have pulled a Face Stalker with that. But he already got both Tingers out of the way, and, he just has a bunch of small stats instead of one bigger.
Oh yeah, we all joke about the 4 mana 7/7, but 4 mana pulling out... Sorry, that was 2 mana. That was 12 worth of stats on the board. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Face Stalker activating a Freezing Trap. Not sure how well that's going to be. Maybe later on it's going to be good, but at the moment, God's Voice is on the ropes.
Yeah, he has barely anything to work with here. He doesn't have too much synergy working in his hand right now. He doesn't have enough mana to play with as of right now. And even if he does, FluffyBoy has so much stats on the board right now that overall he's going to have to find something to work with. And at this stage in the game, I don't know if there's exactly too much he can work with.
He's got one more use of Angling Rod and a Fish Flinger in hand. Sorry. So he does have very little to work with, but he does have it. It's there. It's definitely, if he is lucky enough, he can pull something out of this.
Yeah, and that's a huge, mistake in rear view, looking at God's Voice, going for that face, getting that explosive trap triggered. You might be looking at early trades when it comes to Hunter because, you know, he doesn't run too many spells, like direct damaging spells at that. And it's usually just secrets that are going to be triggered. So you much rather have, in terms of those trades, getting, say, a freezing trap off and get the battle cry effect on a minion off once again, or something the likes of that. But instead, he just opted to go straight for face, get that explosive trap triggered, and then allowed Hunter to totally flip the board, have establishment, and especially when Murlocs don't have any taunts in their pool, he's not going to have anything to work with.
Yep, and it looks like end of turn, a little bit of lag here and there, but I feel like this turn FluffyBoy is going to be ending things off.
He has more than enough damage to do it.
And end of round 1.
That's an issue. I think God's Voice going forward, if he can't even beat this Secret Hunter, which is probably his easiest matchup for this Murloc Paladin, he's going to have a rough time going forward. I mean, he could get the rest of those decks off pretty, a little more easily, I'll say, you know, a Priest and Totem Shaman, but he doesn't have as much to work with because he has to finish and he has to get all 3 decks completed in order to win a series. And if he's going to have to go back to that Murloc Paladin, at this point, I mean, FluffyBoy's completely compromised you at this time. I mean, you know, he exactly knows what you're going for. He knows what you have. And he knows that you don't have any taunts. You have no way to stop him from dealing that damage. You have no way to recover that damage in any kind of way. So overall, I mean, this isn't looking too good for him up front.
Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see what he pulls out there, see if he can come back. But right now we are going to be seeing Corrupt Paladin versus Totem Shaman. Totem Shaman, I feel like it's very interesting. I feel like it's very hit or miss for me personally.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's how most aggressive decks are when you really break it down. You're hoping for those mulligans. You're hoping to get that perfect curve going on. I mean, I'm sure if God's Voice had an evil totem in hand or something the likes of that he could have, you know, replicated the next turn, that would have been awesome for him. But he doesn't have that option because, you know, you want more resource generation, you want more little toys to play with overall, but if you don't get those options up front, you're kind of just scrapping together something until you can get a board, and at that point, I mean, Paladin usually has an answer for it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And at this point, getting the Spell Totem, I would say Spell Totem is one of the best random drops that's available in the basic totem pool. I would say tied with the Taunt, I would say that it's about one of the better ones to get. What do you say about that?
I mean, I completely agree with you. I love the Spell Totem because, I mean, looking at totems overall, and especially these deck archetypes you're trying to play with, you have a lot of spells which are trying to buff damage and things of the likes of that. And when you don't have, you know, too many options to work with, especially when you're working on that Bloodlust right there, which we see that God's Voice has one in hand, you know, that's your main damage dealer. So overall, you're not looking mostly for damage like something like a Volcanic Totem. You're looking for these 2 healths. You're looking for things that he can hopefully hold on to. But not looking like he's going to hold on to this Bloodlust. Getting only 7 damage out of it?
I'm confused, for one thing. Using both his coin and a Lightning Bloom to get out a Bloodlust that just clears a minion and gets 4 damage to face. Yeah, that's a creative play, to be frank. That is quite the imaginative use of those cards.
I mean, yeah, I'm totally with you. Like that, I'm kind of at a loss of words, but I'm gonna have to manage what I can. You know, being in the position we're in as casters, you know, talking about what he could have been looking at right there. I understand the board clear. That's totally fair. Especially when you're looking at a 2/3, which gives you another minion in hand. I don't think you want to be looking at trading out minions right there because you're going to have more resources to replace it later on in the game. Meanwhile, you're utilizing your one trump card, your win condition right there, which is Bloodlust, +3 tied to all your minions. You're trying to usually flood the board in those situations, but when you only have one minion that's getting damage onto the hero, it seems kind of pointless.
Yeah, I would say so. It's throwing away a win condition like that, just for a little bit of chip damage, I personally think there's some place he could have done that might have been better. Very unlucky Trick Totem, by the way, giving him 2 1/1s in his hand. Not the worst thing that could have happened, but definitely it's up there on how bad a Trick Totem can get. He does have his second Bloodlust in hand, and fortunately for us, he doesn't have any more Lightning Blooms to use to get the Bloodlust out. But it does appear that he uses his Volcano Splitting Axe to get some nice 1/1 Searing Totems on the board. Just get a little bit more board presence.
I mean, that's exactly what you're looking for. We now see him actually building a board to Bloodlust because he already has that second copy in hand, which usually in a situation that's really lucky. I mean, I'll sit there, I've played Totem Shaman before, and there'll be times where I don't draw either one of them, and I'm just trying to manage with a bunch of 1/1s on board or 0/2s. But it's interesting he opted for duplicating all the totems when they were only at their base stats. Like, I understand it if you're going for a Bloodlust next round, which even then he doesn't have lethal just yet. He has let's see, he has a good bit of damage on the board. Maybe with the axe he'd be cutting it just a tiny bit short. But with that replicating, I mean, overall, if he doesn't have 8 mana to give the Bloodlust replication off.
He's still going to be on 10 health, I believe he's going to be. But he's very much alive. And with Amber Watcher in hand, that's it's gonna be very rough for the God's Voice to come back from this one.
Because we see, with the minions right here, we got 10, 14, 18, 21. So he's gonna have 5 health left. But yes, he does have an Amber Watcher in hand, which is a huge heal for him, which he gave to him when he
traded the Murloc in earlier with his other Bloodlust. Yeah,
exactly, into the other red scale. So he kind of set himself up there to, he's going to use his win condition to once again trade into a minion, give FluffyBoy a resource to shut down his next win condition. So, overall, questionable plays all around. He may be looking for trades here, but at that point, I mean, Paladin in this stage will only be playing about 1 or 2 cards per turn because everything's going to get a little more expensive, but overall, still doesn't seem like it'd be enough.
The only thing more interesting than that is to just not attack on your turn after using... Did he disconnect? Do we know if God's Voice is no longer with us?
That's what it's looking like currently, because I can tell that we're probably both looking at a reconnect screen right now, but it seems to be as if it's gone now, and FluffyBoy's playing out his turn here.
Ouch? Can I say ouch for the God's Voice using a Bloodlust there and disconnecting and not able to attack instead of getting FluffyBoy down to 5 HP?
Yeah, because, I mean, when you're in that situation and you allow him to get no health off and you just play a Truth Seeker, I mean, obviously he has a taunt now. If he had another Bloodlust, well, I mean, which he doesn't at this point, you've used both copies at this time, you're working with relatively nothing. He's going to have to trade into that 4/6 in order to open up the board, but there's no way he can do that. I mean, he does have this Totemic Surge, but he's getting rid of so many minions in order to do this.
Yeah, he is. I sort of feel bad, and I'm gonna say I feel bad because of him not able to use his Bloodlust that early. Very unfortunate, very interesting trades going on here with the minions, after using,
I mean, looking at it, he did have those trading opportunities, FluffyBoy did, but when God's Voice didn't capitalize on that Bloodlust, I mean, that was huge. He does have a board now, and if he could get a Bloodlust off at this point, I mean, that'd be great. But overall, he just doesn't have any resources now. He's not working on much. We now see FluffyBoy throwing an 8-8 down, and we see him throwing a 6-6 taunt. So, I mean, it seems like God's Voice is getting dried out here. Has nothing left at this time besides an evil totem, which he could have appreciated more earlier in the game to get a little more resources, maybe get a kobold lackey or something the likes there. But, I mean, this man is just run dry at this point. I mean, looking at previous plays, if he sat there and went for damage on the face with the blood loss, I mean, that would have probably pressured FluffyBoy into saying, okay, maybe I need to trade out, because he could have these totemic surges in order to give a little more attack to these guys. But, I mean, looking at the plays he did, he could have had that lethal that next turn. Say if FluffyBoy was put in a situation with 5 or 10 mana, or 5 or 10 health, excuse me, but overall just not being able to follow up with that.
And a missed lethal opportunity coming in from FluffyBoy and playing Fleet Hoof Pearl Tusk to clear the taunt and just going face with Plagued Proto Drake. It's going to be Torrent. Huge play. Huge, very lucky play. Lucky draw, I should say, from God's Voice. Not great hands. Not a great hand. Yeah, I think, don't think he survives this one.
Yeah, safe to put this one in the books, I gotta say. I mean, the man has nothing to work with at this point. Meanwhile, FluffyBoy has 12 damage on the board. Mm-hmm. You know, he has plenty of heals. He has 2 Libra Wisdoms. Looks like he's just gonna pop these for the heck of it.
Oh yeah.
But absolutely. I mean, besides that, I mean, when you got 0 cost spells, why not? You know what I'm saying? It's like, heck, what the heck with it?
Yeah, but, just like a Spirit Blossom. It's got 0 mana, just throw it out, you know?
Yeah.
Just, so yeah, very interesting match 2. What are you thinking personally that, that both of these players need to keep in mind as we move into match 3?
I'm thinking, you know, overall, God's Voice, he needs to be looking at just trying to put himself on the board. Overall, I mean, I'm not going to try and blame anything on connection because, I mean, we don't know what situation these guys are in. But overall, absolutely, we're looking at, you know, just looking at the game, we need to, from a Totem Shaman perspective, if he tries and plays that again, and even a Paladin perspective, if you're going to be going aggro, you need to be looking at your resources. You need to be looking at what the opponent theoretically has. I mean, when you're playing on PC, you could have a deck tracker looking at those secrets, or maybe they're playing on mobile. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the situation is here, but overall, making it hard to kind of play out. But, I mean, when you're playing an aggro deck, you need to put yourself on the board. And I don't feel like these guys are establishing themselves enough on board before following through with these actions. Meanwhile, you know, FluffyBoy doing a great job with it, but I think that's only because God's Voice isn't trading him, putting him in a situation where he needs to reestablish himself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it looks like we are going to be seeing the Murloc's return out of God's Voice.
And that will be the case against the Demon Hunter. And, you know, with Demon Hunter, we don't really see too much variety with this deck. We see the same old every single time. Demon Hunter, I mean, you'll see a Demon Hunter every occasion, you know, with these big cards, these big demons to play up against.
Oh, yeah.
But besides that, I mean, it's such a rare occasion, and it's such a niche kind of deck that you play more for the fun of it rather than actually in a competitive setting. So, you know, being in this situation, overall, Demon Hunter doesn't have very many minions to play with. He's very face-oriented. He's very, you know, self-damage, utilizing your hero to attack the other one. So, I mean, God's Voice definitely has a chance in this kind of matchup if he can get the minions on board and try and find a way to out-tempo and find more minions to trade into so he can sit there and out-trade more damage per turn than FluffyBoy does. I mean, you can only get so much damage on your face onto theirs because that damage goes away after the turn. Meanwhile, if you can find yourself some minions on board to really stick and, you know, trade out more and more damage as the course of the game goes on, he could have a theoretical win in this situation.
It looks like we're going to be seeing a Relentless Pursuit take out that Tide Color. Very nice. not throwing away any damage to your face, being able to clear that threat that could grow into a big problem, knowing the gods, having previously played against the God Voices Murloc deck, knowing that those Tide Colors are going to grow much faster than you're ready for.
Yeah, because especially with how cheap the card is, you go into the next turn knowing how cheap Murlocs are as a whole, you need to go ahead and get that out of the way because it's going to ramp up pretty quickly. I mean, theoretically, if you have 2 Grimscale Oracles in hand like he does, which he's throwing out immediately, not able to get any damage buffs off of them, oddly enough, with that, I mean, that could have been a lot of ramp for that last thing that he had on board, for, you know, that Murloc Tide Caller. That could have been another, say, with those 2 buffs going on, that would have been a 5 plus the 2, that would have been 7 damage on the board. But, I mean, he's throwing out these Oracles now instead of, you know, earlier, or saving them when he has a more established board. Maybe, say, if he can get a Tip the Scales out, which would be astronomical for him, but
absolutely.
You just got to be scared and looking out for trying not to get shut out so quickly, because now we got a Throw Glaive by FluffyBoy, which I think just shuts down Murlocs as a whole.
Oh, yes. I believe I can safely say Throw Glaive against Murlocs. I would say that this is pretty much... It's going to be an uphill battle and a half for the God's Voice here to come back. But you know what? I believe he can do it. I believe that there's definitely a chance for him.
He's got stats on the board. That's a good pull for him.
Very nice. Looks like he's trading in the 1/1.
And from our situation, that probably wouldn't be, you know, if you don't have the benefit of the doubt like we do to actually go on board and know what these guys are dealing with in hand. You know, if you don't know there's a Throw Glaive there, I usually would probably just want to go face there. But thankfully, knowing that you can get that damage off before the Throw Glaive comes in and you're going to get that minion killed anyways, I think it's pretty optimal to run that and go ahead and get that trade in. So, I mean, good play by him, whether or not he knew it. The most optimal choice overall to get that minion off the board. But, you know, we're going to see 2 minions go off the board right here with a trade. And overall, we're going to see these guys try and maintain themselves as best as possible. FluffyBoy looking like he's in a much better situation, having more damage per turn right now. And with God's Voice just not finding a real way to retaliate because he has a lot of expensive minions in hand. Not too much synergy going on and not too many cheap draws to work with right now, which is kind of a huge hindrance for him, running a Murloc deck, and that's what you're relying on.
It looks like he's going to be using a lot of his clears, the Throw Glaive on just the 1 minion, and tempoing out the Shard Shatter Mystic. Things are looking a little bit better if you're in God's Voice's position, knowing that he's thrown away so many of these options for clearing your board.
Which, I mean, as you said, you know, Shard Shatter being a huge board clear overall. I mean, that plays a huge part, deals 3 damage to all other minions on the board. I mean, that's almost for any other kind, especially against Murloc Paladin, that's usually like a board clear against most aggro matchups. I mean, that's usually what you want to do after they get a full board. You can wait it out a turn or 2, say, all right, I can take this damage. I'm a Demon Hunter. I got lifesteal somewhere to deal with. So you can sit there, wait out those turns, and then pop that down on almost a full board, like say something after a Tip the Scales when he's going to use all of his mana to fill the board. You can shut that down for a quarter of the cost almost. So, I mean, a little bit of a misplay there, I think, personally. But, I mean, these guys are doing what they can. God's Voice is now putting himself back on the board, getting these trades in, getting these buffs, and having a war leader with, you know, at a 3-5. I mean, that's good overall. I'm not sure exactly how much you can do with that without Demon Hunter using a bunch of resources for it.
So he's going to go face here instead of clearing off the Murloc war leader. Maybe he's thinking that he will be able to, I don't know, save some damage, go into his face, knowing that he doesn't really have that much heal. Tip the Scales, however. Tipping the Scales is quite the pull, giving him a full board.
Which, it does give you 7 minions anyways. So regardless, it would have been a full board, but playing that with the 2 minions on board already, you know, I think that's huge for him not to utilize that. That's a free board fill right there. when you have the 8 mana and you're trying to establish yourself on board. I mean, it's great in a matchup like this, but when you already have 2 minions on board, you have a minion which is next turn going to give you 3 Murlocs as a whole. I think a Gift of Luminance would have been a much better draw there because a War Leader, it gives you that damage buff. It gives them both Divine Shield, proccing them from those attacks that Demon Hunters, I mean, notoriously going to get and going to focus to get those trades, clear out those minions, especially when we see he has a Blade Dance in hand. The fact he didn't do that Gift of Luminance is huge in my opinion.
Absolutely. But it does look like, even though it might not have been the perfect play for the situation, FluffyBoy does not have a lot to go against it. He does not have that Throwing Glaive. He does not have the Shard Shatter Mystic. And looks like he's going to be using the Divine Shield on a full board.
Yeah, another interesting play. Because, I mean, he didn't get the utilization of getting that extra minion out of it. I mean, personally, I would have done it for something more like McGurgle, because, I mean, that's another prime in your deck. That's another 7 cost. So just going to summon, 3, 4 more minions for you. Overall, depending on whether you get a dormant minion or not. I mean, that could have been free. That could have been another 2 insanely good draws for him, especially in a draw-heavy deck. You increase your likelihoods of grabbing those cards. But, I mean, super odd that he opts for it now. I mean, he still has that option with this Gift of Luminance he just got in hand, but is he going to choose to use it there, or is he just going to Divine Shield the Fishy Flyer again?
Going to Divine Shield the Fishy Flyer again. Very interesting choice to do that, but it appears no more Soul Fragments left in FluffyBoy's deck. Zoologist isn't going to do anything. Soul Shard Lapidary isn't going to do anything. I think he just loses here.
He does indeed. Looking at the damage on board, we got 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 15, 16. And Demon Hunter only has 14. So, I mean, overall, FluffyBoy doesn't have anything to work with. He doesn't have any buffs to try and play. He doesn't have any lifesteal going for him now. At this stage in the game, you just kind of got to give in because, I mean, he's even going face. So, in that case, you can't look for any trades because even if you do, you're going to get that damage on yourself regardless. So,
absolutely. And it looks like match 3 is going to be going to the God's Voice.
Interesting.
So
we do have a game on our hands indeed now. FluffyBoy looking like he could have 3-0'd, but...
Oh yeah, you know what? And hey, you were saying earlier that Murloc is one of his weaker decks to have. So you know what? We could be seeing a reverse sweep right now. I'm excited.
Well, I mean, I did say that. But I I gotta admit, I'm biting my tongue after seeing some of those Shaman plays. I may have to go back to the drawing board on that one. Because he's going to be facing it again now. And I think as long as Demon Hunter saves these Soul Shatters, holds onto those fragments in his deck, tries to mulligan for him, which is what he's opting to do so far, it looks like. Mm-hmm. I think he has a much better shot to clear these boards, take care of these options that he's got, and Shaman's going to have a real ringer to deal with this time around.
Absolutely. And hey, he has Eldrachi Warblades, Il'gynoth, and Chaos Strike all in the same hand. He could be going for the OTK.
Which, I mean, that is an option. Issue is he has to find a way to allocate his resources well enough in order to get the OTK.
Absolutely.
I mean, we saw last game, he's sitting there just destroying soul fragments just to get a minion on the board, instead of playing something else or just holding off a little bit. Especially when there's nothing on board. I understand board control is everything, but I mean, you don't need to throw something down, waste the battle cry just to get a 3-3 down. So overall, I think, Demon Hunter is capable of it, but can't exactly get off. And
very unfortunate. Trick Totem. You hate to see it. I'm just gonna leave it at you hate to see it. Casting a random spell, it costs 3 or less, killing his own minion. Random stuff definitely is a hard thing to account for when you are playing these types of decks.
Mm-hmm.
But
that was a good draw, though. I mean, he got a great one out of that. I mean, man got another snack run. I mean, so he got a bloodlust out of that. So he just got another card for his win condition here. So I mean, that's astronomical. I mean, if I was in a ladder situation, I'd be thanking RNGesus for that one.
Oh, but absolutely.
In this situation, he's got to actually utilize these bloodlusts. I mean, just because you have another one in hand doesn't mean that's another one you can just kind of throw away. He still has to sit there, think about how he's going to use it.
Does have a third bloodlust now.
He's definitely got to think about how to use it now, because he needs to get rid of one of them, because I mean, he just has too many in hand to deal with.
At this point, it would not surprise me if he just used one just to get a hand. But hey, he's probably thinking, you know what? Last match I could have used a third or fourth bloodlust, and you know what? This time RNG is like, you know what? Hey, I'll give it to you. There's your third bloodlust. Okay, some nice,
really good draws here.
Very lucky.
The trick totem is getting back. He shut down a minion and was like, okay, that's not exactly what I wanted.
Yes, you know what? You sometimes need to make a sacrifice for some of your gods to just, you know what? Exactly.
Demon Hunter opting to end the turn here. So instead of getting off, that diligent note taker, which would have been huge, because when you think about it, that God's Voice is going to be looking at a bloodlust here. And he's going to get it right back into hand once he casts it because of that diligent. That's going to pop out that spell burst, allowing him to have another one in hand, which is huge for this Demon Hunter. I don't know exactly how he's going to be able to manage at this point, because when you have so many resources to work with, you have so many bloodlusts at this point, I mean, heck, go for it, man. And you can sit there and get more boards. Your trick totem apparently is on your side at this point, giving you everything you need to work with a secret, with a draw to, everything is working in your favor. So at this point in the game, I mean, you can burn those bloodlusts. You don't need to worry about that as much.
Very greedy Il'gynoth here. He might just be dead. He might just be dead from bloodlust next turn. It's not going to be enough damage.
It's going to be 12 here.
It's going to be 12 damage to his face. Yeah, he dies to bloodlust.
And he does have that Torn as well to sit there and clear the 2/6 if he wants to DM it, but I think he's just going to look to end here.
Absolutely. And it looks like Game 4 goes to the God's Voice. Okay.
So we're looking at a 2-2 here. This is interesting. This is getting good now.
Absolutely. I am very excited. We're going on to Game 5. To Game 5.
Now in this situation, we're going to see FluffyBoy's Paladin for the first time, because he hasn't whipped it out yet. Or wait, he did actually whip it out. I'm sorry, against no, he won. I'm sorry. He won with the Paladin already. What he's going to have to whip out now is going to be that Demon Hunter once again. I'm sorry. Excuse the ignorance, but overall, he's going to have to whip out that Demon Hunter once again. But now, we're going to be seeing God's Voice Priest here, which we haven't seen yet. I think he's been trying to get those aggro decks out of the way, as I've been, usually advising for most of these players, because of how drawn base it is, how much you need to be lucky in the front end and try and get those draws right up front with those mulligans. I mean, I totally understand trying to get that out of the way, because if you lose it, you can go ahead and play it again, and you have one more shot to get those draws you need to help yourself out. Because regardless of the win rates, I mean, it all comes down to those beginning draws. So, the more you play those aggro decks, the more options you have, and the more opportunities you get to win that early game and establish yourself. So, at this state, I mean, Demon Hunter, he's cashing in on everything. He only has this one opportunity left. He didn't find too many resources to work with, didn't have too many soul shatters. He didn't get those soul fragments in his deck to capitalize on. So at this point, it's just going to be him facing off against Priest, who has just a lot of heals. So, I mean, Demon Hunter could ping him down all day, but with so many heals and Priest putting himself on board so well, and especially looking at the model we have here, with a Sand Hoof, which, heals 5 at the end of a turn. Even then, just a Penance and just a Renew, which is so easily discoverable by a Priest. There's so many options here for him to help himself.
Absolutely. Very interesting. It looks like it's going to be some Control Resurrection Priest is what we're going to be seeing out of here. Two notable minions that I feel are a little bit out of... you don't really see that often is Sen'jin Shieldmaster and Batterhead. So how do you feel about those two minions being put into this deck?
I feel like for the resources he's dealt with. We can see both these players are silver. I know when you're in that kind of elo, you don't have too many resources to work with because, you know, the more cards you have, the more you're favoring yourself in the ladder, allowing yourself to climb. So when you're kind of cut short on materials, I understand the picks, totally. I mean, Sinjin, when you're playing a kind of resurrection-based deck, you want to get as many kind of taunts down as possible. That's the whole point. I mean, but I probably, in turn of the Sinjin, I would have gone probably with another spell of some kind, and because the biggest thing about this res deck is you're trying to get off as many Sandhoofs off as possible. You're trying to get as many convincing infiltrators, as many Karchut defenders, things of the likes of that will sit there and stall the game longer, control the board for you when you don't really need to do anything. So a Batterhead I understand for like an aggro deck. So if he was, so say if God's Voice was facing off against a, you know, Murloc Paladin or something the likes of that, that would be great. But I don't think there's too many decks that are run in this archetype where there's a big board that you need to clear with a lot of weak health minions to where it seems kind of irrelevant. So I feel like there was better options there, most definitely. But when you only have so much to work with, we know the monetization of Hearthstone. We know it can be expensive sometimes. So, I mean, these guys are going to play with what they can. They're going to deal with the cards they get. And, I mean, overall, I mean, regardless of the lookout, it really just comes down to Demon Hunter getting good draws up front and Priest being able to survive until late game. And looking at it right now, Demon Hunter doesn't have too much to work with.
Yeah, I'd have to say both players do not have much at this point in time to work with. Minions for Priest, 4 mana is the cheapest that he's got in hand right now. Everything else is just minion-based, and yeah, the FluffyBoy does not have a board, does not have a lot of the aggro that you usually see in Demon Hunter. So that stuff locked away in the back of his deck.
I mean, he does have a couple, like maybe face attack buffs, the things like Chaos Strike, you know, with that Wand Maker, things like so, just a little bit of here and there to operate with. But besides that, you don't have much else to work with. I mean, Priest, in this case, he's probably just going to be looking at hero powering for the rest of the game. If, you know, Demon Hunter can't get any resources down, which, looking at his hand so far, it's going to be just either 1 or 2 cards per turn, which Priest could easily heal off in that later game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Very nice philosophy coming out here. Not any cards in hand that are able to proc it, so he should be saving this for later on when he does have. He just he uses it. A blunder, I believe, would be a correct assessment. And we move over to God Voice's turn.
I mean, when I'm in this situation, though, I mean, I guess if I'm in those early stages of the game, you know, still trying to get the hang of stuff, and I see that yellow effect around a card, I'm thinking it's going to pop something. So, I mean, maybe, you know, these guys, they're kind of flustered with what's going on. They're still trying to get an understanding of things and figure stuff out, especially when playing against each other, because albeit, well, even us as casters, we're a little bit confused with what's going on here and there. So maybe they're just as confused as we are. So, you know, these guys, maybe when he saw that yellow border, he's like, okay, I'll go ahead and proc this, see what I can get off of it. Soul Shard being the only minion in hand, so I mean, he could have gotten another one off of that. So overall, but I mean, not getting anything out of it is kind of big for him. A 1 cost, which could, you know, giving you a lot more resource in hand, doubling a demon. But at this point, this is where Priest is going to start ramping himself a lot. He's going to start getting some minions down, start doing something with his cards, start playing the game, getting these big boards, and just overpowering Demon Hunter unless he can play something really strong to retaliate.
Absolutely. That is perfectly said. Maybe he's a little bit, you know, flustered under the pressure of being here on this stage up against his opponent here. Not really 100% sure exactly. A little nervous. But yeah, you know what? It's completely understandable to make small mistakes like that. Very awkward hand, though, for FluffyBoy's position. Not much. He does get a Marrow Slicer, which is really good. Should be able to take out the Senjin after using his hero power. And getting some very much needed Soul Fragments into his deck. Very, very nice. Will he be using it, though?
And that's a big consideration for him, because when you're playing right now, you need to be looking when you know that turn 6 is coming up. You know that he's probably going to be getting one of those quartet defenders down. I mean, that's where the ramp starts. The fact that Priest really starts shining. I mean, we've seen Sinjin down so far, but that doesn't have any real effects to it. But the fact that you have, when quartet defender, you have a taunt with Reborn, and every time it dies, which is a guaranteed twice unless you get a silence of some kind. I mean, you're getting 6 health per taunt, which is huge for this guy. And you have to get multiple trades into it. And if you only have your hero and maybe a minion to trade with, you're only going to get it off once. And then once you go into the later game, I mean, he can revive 3 of them at a time, especially when you have the likes of, Psychopomp. You have another res on top of it with that Reborn. Once again, no matter what the minion is, I mean, overall, even if he silences it right here, it's not a huge hindrance for Priest because he's only lacking 2 health. So overall, that's not that big a deal. But it still goes into the res pool. Psychopomp can still get it back later, as well as Mass Resurrection. So unless you completely find a way to remove it from the board or transform it into another minion, it's still going to be a threat in the game.
Absolutely, and I have to agree with you there that just because you did get rid of it now doesn't mean that you got rid of the issue now, you silenced it, you don't have to worry about him getting that extra healing. Doesn't mean that it's going to be completely out of the issue here.
Summoning,
draw. Not the best minion to get from Psychopomp, but still solid taunt on the board, preventing some outgoing damage from the Demon Hunter.
Which, in part, to play with that is the fact that it does have Reborn when you give it Psychopomp's ability the first time. So Sinjin, it's technically, you have a much higher likelihood to revive, Sinjin at this point, because of the fact that you sat there, it's died once originally, then you revived it with Psychopomp, then it died 2 more times. So when you're looking at the res pool, you have 1 Psychopomp, you have 1 Quartet, and then you have 4 Sinjins. I mean, the likelihood is there. So you're most likely going to get that draw. So maybe in hindsight going forward, he's probably going to say, maybe I shouldn't play that right up front. I should get the likelihood of my better, bigger minions in that pool and kind of prioritize those. But when you're facing a Demon Hunter who doesn't really have anything to work with, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Absolutely. It's very unfortunate hand for FluffyBoy not having much. Using that Mana Feeder Panthera to get that extra card draw. School of Gul'dan is going to be amazing next turn. This turn he's going to coin it out. Okay, really good card draw. But yeah, like I was saying, Sinjin Shieldmaster, he played the first one when he got it. Then he got the Psycho that gave it Reborn, so that's 2 more, and then he played it again, and so there's 5 total Sinjin Shieldmasters in the res pool. So that's gonna be very tough to get that Quartet Defender if it's 5 versus 1.
Yeah, especially with this Mass Resurrection coming up, the fact that you're resurrecting 3 minions, but you're not getting that Reborn effect out of this. I mean, he could be looking at 3 Sinjins right here, which he doesn't get. He gets 2 out of 3.
He gets Psychopomp. That's
not as good as the draw.
You know what? Absolutely, but at this point, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I mean, you usually want to sit there and opt for the Convincing Infiltrators, which you just now got one in hand, albeit, when you're put in that situation, you're not dealt with too much to deal with. You want to go ahead and try and protect yourself as much as possible from Demon Hunter. But if you have the Quartet Defender in hand already, maybe next time around, just kind of wait it out, let that turn, because, Quartet's going to save your life. So, say if he played that up front, then that died twice, or died once at least, and he does a Psychopomp. It goes 2 more times, then you sit there and have 5 more times with another one. It would just ramp way too quickly, and especially with the Mass Resurrection coming up as well, which he just popped. Think about it. That is 3 more, which have to die twice, theoretically. With the likelihood of how many times it's going to be put in the res pool at that point, you're going to have 18 damage to heal. So, Demon Hunter isn't too much of a threat at that point when you've got a lot of healing on board that doesn't even matter.
Il'gynoth coming out, getting a little bit of extra damage out onto God's Voice. he does have quite the arsenal to deal with Il'gynoth, but we'll see what he comes up with. We'll see what he decides to do.
Interesting.
Going to use both Holy Novas here. Very interesting play, and creative use of Holy Nova's ability to not only heal your minions but deal damage to your opponents as well. Getting that little bit of extra health on your minions to keep them alive, to get that Batterhead proc.
Which, albeit, when you are facing up against a Bladed Lady, which FluffyBoy does have in hand, he was probably looking at the threat like that. Knowing that facing this Demon Hunter in the past, seeing that Bladed Lady come out before, he knew it was going to be a threat at some point, thinking about how do I go ahead and protect myself against this. So if he gets those heals on the minions as best as possible, making sure not to trade the Shield Master in, and then make sure that, that Batterhead is left undefended, he's technically throwing away damage if he doesn't get those procs and get those heals off. So making sure that the Bladed Lady is going to have to trade into the Shield Master if he's going to do any kind of face damage or amount himself to anything. But even with that, if he does get it off, you're going to have Batterhead, you're going to be able to heal it, trade into Bladed Lady with that 3 health, and then, trade it right into Demon Hunter's face at that point. So lots of stuff to work with, but we got to see it be executed now.
Looks like 8 healing to his face. It's going to be a very even game. Similar life totals right now. Does appear that he's going to... I assume he's going to be just Plaguing of Death in here, just to clear the board, set everything even. It's a pretty close game.
It is. Surprisingly, because albeit, right up front, I thought Priest had this in the bag. Especially with seeing the opening hand, those Kartuk defenders, the Psycho Pomps right there. Usually in a matchup like this, you're going to think, oh, Priest has this over and done with. But with so many unlucky and unfortunate pulls with, getting just a bunch of Shield Masters, especially in those Psycho Pomp draws, that's going to be huge for him.
Unfortunate Soul Fragment not going to reduce the cost of Blade Dance, but... Ooh, very unlucky. Only Spirit Jailer getting the discount there of the 3 cards drawn. Not the best hand, I would say. Not the best card drawn.
Yeah, especially looking at what Priest has to deal with. Priest obviously popping the penance right here. Make sure to get those heals, clear that board. All you really have to work with is a Shard Shatter in hand and a Blade Dance and a Twin Slice. I mean, Demon Hunter's running out of resources really, really quickly here. And Priest in this stage of the game, he can really just let Kartuk stand there, and he can throw out an Infiltrator when need be, just heal himself and deal 3 damage for the rest of the game. Because, I mean, that's all he really needs. Once this dies the first time, see, he gets full heals, still has 3 on the board. And next turn, he can throw out an Infiltrator if he needs to, and just basically draw this out until fatigue because of how much Demon Hunter has to draw.
Absolutely. Nice clear coming in from FluffyBoy as he gets good board pressure and 7 damage. Very, very nice.
So it's going to pop that. That's going to be able to trade into both of these minions and still maintain surviving unless you throw that Battle Fiend out there. So, I mean, Demon Hunter has the damage to trade into it. It's going to clear. That's going to be complete board wipe is what we're looking at here. Because, I mean, he has no other cards in hand. Now it is Priest. Priest is going to be looking, Demon Hunter has 1 damage to deal every turn. But Priest can deal and heal 2 damage every turn. So, overall, even with the Mara Slicer, that's only heals to yourself, things of the likes of that. And is he going to trade into this and kill this 2/2?
Yeah, he's going to kill the 2/2.
Okay. Interesting choice, albeit.
Interesting and creative choice there. To use that second slice to get that little extra damage out, not having to trade in his 2/2 and just having it die to the Death Rattle there. Not a stellar hand from God's Voice either. Shadow Word, Death and Pain, chilling in hand, no minions to use it on.
Okay, good draw for FluffyBoy here. God's Voice will be able to get rid of 2 of these, though, because of the 2 spells that he has in hand. But that will still leave a 3/3 on board. You still have a 4 damage weapon in hand.
Okay, he does not get a pain. But, yes, clearing 2 of those minions on the board is going to be very good for God's Voice. Will it be enough, though? The 5/5 tells me probably yes.
Now, Demon Hunter is able to trade into this. So he still does have the establishment on board. He still has the upper hand because he can hero power, clear that 5/5, and then utilize that 3/3 to out damage the amount that Priest can heal over the course of the game. Issue is, this needs to happen quick for FluffyBoy because he's running out of cards. He's running out of cards as a whole. So he's going to, I mean, he only has 5 cards in his deck, 2 of those being Soul Fragments. So technically he only has 3 to work with as a whole. He needs to hurry up and get this damage on the board because Priest, he's going to pull another Mass Resurrection or just any minion at all would be good enough for him to out-tempo this damage and heal himself off.
Breath of the Infinite doing a little bit of damage onto that 3/3, bringing it down to a 3/1. There's one of the Soul Fragments that you were just talking about.
Not many cards left.
Not too many cards left, indeed. As this goes down to the wire. Both players just having to get their top decks as lucky as possible.
Which means this Bladed Lady is huge for him. That assists him in terms of getting that damage off quickly, and he may actually be able to out-damage him before he can get any kind of res going, and any kind of heals going off for Priest here. We do see the Batterhead being the only resource to come out and work with, being able to clear one of those minions, but overall, you know, he can trade into this Bladed Lady. Issue is, you know, you got to look for a way. Demon Hunter, he has, you know, 2-3 damage on himself alone, which he can use to clear the Batterhead and keep the 6 on board.
He absolutely can. Will he do it though? That is the question.
That's the question we're all looking to answer here.
Will he go all face just to get that extra damage in as much as he can, or will he be using the second slice plus his hero power to get rid of that Batterhead?
I mean, with nothing to look at here, you know, he has nothing left in his deck. He only has a second slice left in his hero power for the rest of the game here. I mean, that's the only option. If he trades that Bladed Lady in any kind of way, gets enough damage on it where it's dying, he's only doing 1 damage per turn, while Priest is maintaining to heal 2 per turn. So, I mean, if he doesn't maintain this trade right here, he's going face. Batterhead being able to survive. Oh no. Oh no.
And Penance pretty much seals out the game here. Not even needing to clear the Batterhead. Yep. That is going to be match 5 going over to the God's Voice.
I mean, that's just game right there. That's the series.
There is nothing FluffyBoy can do.
Yeah, we saw that FluffyBoy, you know, he had the upper hand right there in the front, winning up against, you know, that Murloc Paladin, you know, as his regular hunter. But in this stage in the game, he burned himself out way too quickly, didn't take advantage of the resources he had, and it just seemed as if he kind of threw it there at the end.
Absolutely. Very, very down to the wire for both players. Very exciting 5th round. Very interesting plays coming in from both players. Mick, have anything to say about our victor here, God's Voice?
I want to say our victor, FluffyBoy, you know, God's Voice. I'm sorry,
God's
you're
Voice.
correct. Yeah,
No
it was so much back and forth that I just kind of got lost. But overall, you know, I think these guys, you know, maybe hit ladder a little more, try and find these cards, you know, maybe watch some other like YouTubers or things of the likes of that. You know, I watch a lot of streamers myself to sit there and kind of hinder myself, you know, things of the likes of Kibler, Regis, things like that. Absolutely. But overall, I mean, these guys, they'll give you great advice. They'll explain what's going on just as much as we do, but they play at a much higher level, competing in tournaments and things like that. Plenty of guys like that, but just maybe watch them, hinder yourself, because going forward, you win and you lose, but overall this matchup seemed pretty fair. So going forward, once you start winning more games, they're going to be facing the likes of guys who are in Legend, who are top 50, things like that. So they really got to be preparing themselves going forward.
Absolutely. I can sense that there's a lot of talent behind both these players, but a little bit of behind, not actually in-game looking up stuff, doing some research and stuff like that, watching videos, just like you said. Definitely is going to go a long way for both these players. But I believe, unless there's anything else.
The only thing I can think of is to thank one of our sponsors here.
Ooh.
I mean, that's the only thing I got. I mean, unless you got anything else to say to capitalize off of what I was bringing to the table, talking about these videos. I mean, there's obviously plenty of things else that could probably be discussed about these guys, but I mean, we can't be here all night. So
absolutely, we could spend hours talking about each individual thing that they did good, that they could work on. But yeah, for now, I think we're just going to be wrapping it up with a message from our sponsors.
Who is going to be Meta, who's a pro gaming full-service esports management, developmental, and consulting company. They also provide esports coaching, college esports management, arena design, and equipment. So if you guys want to hear any more about them, y'all can visit them at metaprogaming.gg to learn more. And with that, we'll close out Hearthstone Week 3 here with NECC Esports.
Absolutely. Hope all of you had a great day today. Hope all of you have a great day tomorrow, and make sure to stay frosty.